Gamers, remember when I used to actually make Master Duel content? Yeah, well here's a deck I actually care about and feel like talking about. So, this is Tenyi Swordsoul. This is a very powerful mid-range deck that had just come out just a couple hours earlier today, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a deck breakdown, a little bit of a card-by-card discussion, as well as some of that sweet gameplay. So, let's jump straight into it.
Super Idol 的笑容都没你的甜，八月正午的阳光都没你耀眼。
The Sword-Souls are a series of monsters based off of legendary Chinese swords. Being Chinese, I do know how to pronounce them in their native dialect. However, my inner Gaijin is speaking out, and I'm going to go with how you white folk call them. All of their cards are based around worms. Their monsters trigger their effects after interacting with a Sword Soul or worm, and their spell and trap lineup coincide with worms as well as the Sword Souls. This eventually led to players in the TCG using Tenyi as a supplementary engine for extension, combos, and corner case scenarios for removal. The monster's gimmick is that they can synchro summon with themselves, whereby resolving their effect, they are able to summon a level 4 tuner that locks you into synchros while it's on the board, and apply an additional effect when they are used as synchro material. Combined with these spells and traps' ability to modulate levels, you're able to branch synchro lines from 7 to 9 and 9 to 11 if you so desire. With consistent setups, deceptively powerful lines, and insane follow-up, Swordsoul is a definite shoo-in for tier 1 meta contention. And with that, let's get into the card by card. We've got 3 Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuosis. She's a Pankratops for a special summoning condition, and she can tribute herself as a quick effect in order to summon any Sword Soul from your deck for absolutely free, which is super duper broken. We've got 3 Sword Soul of Moye, who is your best one. It draws a card when it's used as material. Sword Soul of Taya is a Foolish Burial when it's used as material, and Longwan burns for 1200, I don't know. Anyways, for the Tenyis, we've got 2 Adhara, who is really necessary for follow-up and really specific level lines if you are going to be using the Tenyis to go into the Sword Soul synchros. We've got 1 Vashada, who is very searchable because of Ashana, but you can max out on this if you feel like it, and because it has a very good matchup versus certain cards, most specifically DPE. And finally, we've got 2 Ashana, just because it's Ashana. It specials from deck, but just know it does lock you into worm monsters when you use that effect, so you won't be able to go into cards such as Baron or DP the same turn you are using Ashana for something. Next, for the Sword Soul spells and traps, we've got 3 Emergence, who adds either a Sword Soul from your deck to your hand, or any worm if you control a synchro. Sacred Summit is a Reborn for a Sword Soul, or any worm if you control a synchro. And Blackout is Icarus Attack, where you target a worm and 2 cards your opponent controls and destroy them. And if any of them are banished, if any of the spells are banished, you can change the level of a Sword Soul monster control by 1, whether by increasing or decreasing. And Blackout, when it's banished, you get to summon a token, which is really good alongside cards such as Sword Soul of Taya or your Chixiao. Anyways, for the rest of the deck, we've got hand traps because Master Duel. We've got 3 Maxi because we hate life. We've got 3 Ash Blossom, who is especially important in this format due to the massive influx of Fusion Destinies and DPEs. You got 3 Skullmeister for the previously mentioned reason. You can play DD Crow if you really want to, but I just find that Skullmeister has a little bit more application when compared to cards such as Ghost Bell or DD Crow, and I just feel like Skullmeister's the better choice. Cheaper too. And 1 Nibiru just to give our Maxi a little bit more teeth and to make them shit their pants. We are playing 1 Protoss, who is honestly the main reason why this deck is so incredible. It cannot be normal summoner set and must first be special summoned by banishing 3 monsters with different attributes from your graveyard and or face-up field. It cannot be destroyed by card effects, and you can declare 1 monster attribute on the field, destroy all monsters on that field with that attribute, and also until the end of the next turn, neither player can special summon monsters with that attribute. Yes, just so you know, you can declare Dark, which Protoss is. Protoss will not destroy itself, and your opponent still cannot special summon Dark monsters. And it is a worm, so guess what this card is searchable off? That's right, Emergence. In very specific high roll hands where you know the matchup or you just want to completely dunk on your opponent, Grandmaster Chixiao is able to search out the Emergence, and Emergence is just going to be searching out your Protoss, and if you have all the right pieces lined up, you can basically just say fuck you to your opponent. Anyways, we've got the Fusion Destiny package because I just want to show it off. I don't think it's particularly great, but I have a whole video essay talking about why Verte and DP aren't as good as people originally thought, but We've got 2 Fusion Destiny because it's semi-limited, 1 Celestial, and 1 Dasher. Dasher is the least bad one because you are able to reveal and special summon a monster that you draw for draw phase while it's in the graveyard, which is pretty relevant considering all these cards are pretty good on summon. And Celestial is going to banish itself and the Dasher to draw 2 cards when you loop yourself entirely, so that's broken. And of course, we've got 3 Pot of Prosperity. It does have Nombos alongside Moye. You could arguably just cut the Prosperities and play like an Upstart Goblin or maybe even Pot of Desires, but I just personally feel that if you're going to be playing the Fusion Destiny package, I just kind of want to high roll and say Prosperity, maximum consistency. We'll take the Nombo. And 2 Called by the Grave because this card is secretly super broken. Anyways, onto the extra deck. We've got 1 Destiny Hero, Destroyer, Phoenix Enforcer. Get really excited to be sick of this card in like 10 seconds. Pop stuff, Tribute, Revive, broken. We've got 1 Yazi, Evil the Yangzing. This is our only 7 that we are playing because every other synchro is garbage. We're playing 1 Baxia, who is especially good in this deck because, you know, multiple attributes. Worms, level 8s. Anyways, we've got 1 Adamancipator Risen Dragite. This could be basically anything. It could be a Psyframe Lord Omega. It could be like a Stardust Dragon if you really want to. There are like 2 slots that in this deck can basically be occupied by anything. I'm just playing Dragite because it has incidental synergy alongside Moye, and if you want to roll the dice, you could technically reveal a Nibiru and bounce something back to hand. We've got 2 Swordsoul Grandmaster Chi Xiao. This is our main searcher. If it's summoned, you can add or banish a Swordsoul card from your deck. Usually you're going to be using the banish effect if you want to, say, banish Blackout, or you want to add something back off of Adhara in very specific scenarios, but usually you're just going to be adding. And as a quick effect, you can banish a Swordsoul card or Worm from your hand or graveyard and target another effect monster on the field, negate its effects until the end of the turn, very similar to Hot Red Dragon Archfiend. We're playing 2 of that because it's good. We're playing 1 Chaofeng, Phantom of the Yangzing. You're usually going to be using Chaofeng alongside your Baxia and Adhara. You're not going to really go into this every single game, but it's a very matchup-dependent monster, such as against Eldritch or Drytron, but those decks are hopefully dying forever. Anyways, you've got 1 Ruddy Rose Dragon. This card is incredible in very specific matchups. If it's synchro summoned, banish all cards from the graveyards. That should basically just be it. It is really, really good at just nuking graveyards against very specific decks, most notably Striker, Phantom Knight, those sort of things, and even Swordsoul, because usually they want to have a ton of cards in graveyard for their Destiny Hero, Phoenix Enforcer, Taya setups, Tenyi setups. Honestly, this card just has a ton of practical purpose, and if you ever make this, you basically just win the game. We got 1 Baron the Fleur because long one. Anyways, we've got 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Cheng Ying, praise him. This card is secretly super broken, but you don't really go into it every single time just because you don't really have a great way to trigger it, and usually you're just going to be making Baron de Fleur. But for each banished card, it gains 100 attack and defense. Monsters your opponent control lose 100 attack and defense. If this card would be destroyed by battle or card effect, not once per turn, you can banish a card from your graveyard instead, and if a card is banished except during the damage step, you can banish a card from both your opponent's field and graveyard. This card is, again, extremely amazing in a ton of scenarios where you're able to try to pop it to trigger its like protection effect, and then Cheng Ying can then just like non-targeting banish stuff from your opponent's field and grave. It's just absolutely incredible. There are also scenarios where you can use Protos, call water while it's on the board, protect itself from destruction, and guess what? Your Swordsoul opponent cannot summon because guess what type the tokens are? They are water attribute. Anyways, we got 1 Link Spider. This is the sort of second free spot I was talking about. This is just sort of because I am playing the Verte engine, which of course is not 100% mandatory. You could get away with not playing it. Link Spider just sort of makes it in specific instances. If you do get Nibiru, you can still use the Tenyi monsters to special themselves from the hand, and then you can link the Nibiru token into a Link Spider, and then use those 2 to go into a Verte Anaconda. So keep that in mind. We've got 2 Monk of the Tenyi. You need to be playing at minimum 2 because you just have to. You just have to. Just trust me. Just trust me, bro. Anyways, 1 Shaman of the Tenyi for very specific lines. Shaman of the Tenyi is a lot better if you are playing Draco Berserker, but I don't want to spend money on that, so I'm not going to do that. And 1 Predaplant Verte Anaconda because, you know, it's at 1. You're not always going to be making this. Usually you're just going to be hard drawing the Fusion Destiny. There are just, again, very specific lines where you can go into Verte and situations where Verte is effective, but again, you do not have to be playing the DP package. It is very powerful in specific decks. It is a lot less powerful and more bricky in other decks, and this is one of those decks where it's sort of in between, where it's good enough to be playing, and I am personally just going to be playing it just to display the power of the new DP as well as Swordsoul. So, let's get into a match. So, our match is going to be against Sky Striker. Yeah, people are still trying to play that deck. We've opened really good. We are going to Emergence for Moye, and we are going to normal summon the Moye immediately after revealing the Ashana in hand. We're going to summon a token, and we're going to use the Long Wand, discarding the Ashana for another token. We're going to play around Nibiru by making Barone on the 5th summon. Keep this combo in mind, guys. And we're going to burn our opponent for 1200, because why not? Anyways, we're going to use the token and Moye to make Qishao. We're going to Qishao search Chainlink 1 and Moye Chainlink 2. Yeah, you could just chain block this. It's hilarious. And the chain block lets you go plus. We're going to draw a Protoss out the Moye. That's pretty good. And we're going to add the Taya. We're going to banish 3 for Protoss. We're going to declare Dark with the Protoss to lock our opponent out of any Fusion Destiny shenanigans. But most importantly, we're going to lock ourselves out of it. I definitely did not forget. Anyways, they're going to set Blackout and pass. Icarus attack is pretty nice. We're going to gain 1000 off the upstart, and they are going to Rhoda. They're going to reveal a Sky Striker Ace Rose. Not really sure why I didn't go for Ray. Anyways, they're going to Widow Anchor. We're just going to let that resolve because I don't want to get triple tactic talents. They're going to normal summon Rose, go into Hayate, and in the battle phase, they are going to swing for 15. Not really feeling that after the upstart. Anyways, they're going to send an Engage. They are going to go into a Sky Striker Ace Kagari to try to retrieve the Engage. I'm not going to have any of that. I'm going to use the effect of Qishao to banish our Emergence to target the Kagari. That's going to negate it. Fortunately, they didn't have the second Widow Anchor. Things could have gotten really bad really fast. They're now going to go into Shizuku, and during the end phase, they're just going to set one, and before they can search off the Shizuku, we're going to target our Protoss, who can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, and we're going to pop our opponent's Shizuku and set card, which is an Imperial Iron Wall. Seeing the writing on the wall, they are going to concede. So what did we learn today, class? That white monsters are broken? Yeah. Anyways, let's get into the pros and cons. 1, this deck is pretty consistent. I don't think I really had to explain why. It's not. When every card combos with every other card, it basically turns quote-unquote 2-card combos into basically 0-card combos because so many cards just fulfill the requirements for other cards that every card just basically combos with itself. 2, this deck is extremely flexible. Tenyi Swordsoul is just one way of playing the deck. There are a ton of different variations, which include stuff like Stun Swordsoul, where you're basically just playing 20 hand traps and 20 trap cards to maximize against cards like Maxi, or you could play full combo with stuff like Deskbots and Auroradon if you really want to. Yes, people are very dumb. And 3, this deck is so flexible. With so many of its lines being so open-ended, as well as the extremely powerful toolbox of synchro monsters that is provided, there is just so many dumb combos, dumb combo lines that you are just able to use and abuse until the end of time. And yeah, that's mainly the reason why Swordsoul was like tier 1 in the TCG. And the cons. 1, it sort of suffers from the Tri-Brigade problem, where sometimes you have hands that could basically push through like 3 interactions, and sometimes you have a hand that literally loses to Raigeki Break Pass. 2, this deck, again like Tri-Brigade, bricks on itself in very specific ways. Sometimes you'll open nothing but Tayas. Sometimes you'll open nothing but Tenyis. Sometimes you'll open Protoss and 4 Skullmeisters. It just happens that the math of this deck and how these cards combo with each other sometimes line up very poorly. While this doesn't bite into the overall consistency of the deck as a whole, it's just very slightly annoying to know that sometimes these cards just don't work as intended. And 3, this deck isn't massively explosive. It's not doing dumb Hauka Fibrax, Hauka bullshit. It's not doing like 50 Floodgate turbo effects. This is a very fair deck where a bunch of fair effects sort of combine into being ultimately broken in the end. Very similar to how I described Naga Mage in Hearthstone. If you want a deck that is mid-range, very powerful, and honestly just very fun to play, if you want to just, you know, chill out with your white bros on the EMZ, I'd honestly recommend Swordsoul. Fun deck, just spend responsibly. This deck is very expensive. That's gonna be it for me. I just wanted to throw out a little deck profile for one of my most favorite decks in recent time, and yeah, I just really like Swordsoul. Bye bye.